I'm Alex Howard.
And I'm Amanda Silver, and this is Dirty Laundry.
Do you feel like we, because of social media, we romanticize divorce?
Yes. Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes.
With open relationships. Okay, tell me more how we romanticize divorce.
You go.
Go.
I was really quickly. For me, it was to the point because I'm doing this work. I'm following people that are doing the same work, coaches, successful divorced, couples. And they're talking about this 50% lifestyle, and I get to do more of my job or get to pottery class or see my friends, and all of a sudden I'm like, I want a divorce. I do this every single day to the point where it's like almost debilitating to compartmentalize because the work is so difficult and you see the difficulty that our clients are going through. And it was still a moment where I'm like, nope, I want a divorce. Fuck this life. Fuck this taking care of everyone and the mental load and the this. And then I actually stopped and I looked around and I go, since I met my husband, I haven't vacuumed once. He does laundry most of the time. Like he'll, switch the machines. I like to fold it while I'm watching a show. Like we actually have a really good system in place, but I was so inundated with either the negativity about men or the glory of life with only 50% children. And when you're burnt out and tired, seems real ideal.
Yeah.
That it actually was 100% glorifying it for me. I had to stop. I had to unfollow so many people. I've basically stopped using my work account on Instagram because it was taking over my personal life. So I think, yes, that's why I'm 1,000 times yes.
I think we're all, I think I'm guilty of it too, of saying like I'm 7 or 8 years out and, look at me now. But like people don't necessarily share the shit that they go through in a divorce that we see. That we are going through with our clients, right? They only see the end result on social media. It's like, look at me, I'm healed. I'm a healed person and I've discovered myself and I found my person and all these things that they show you on social media. But like, you don't see the real shit and the guilt that comes with not seeing your kids or not being able to be there for your kids and dealing with an ex-partner and all of those things that come with it. So, it's
not fun.
It's not.
It's not fun.
Yeah.
I see the exact same thing with open relationships. It is something I'm personally struggling with because I've been in an open relationship for 15 years. And so to use your words, I am showing the other side of it. It's taken 15 years to get to this point. I could never have been public about this on social media in the first 10 years because I was still figuring it out. And I'm at a much more confident point now. I'm also at a point where it wouldn't impact my job, my career, my marriage, or my opinions of myself, my worth, my confidence in myself and my marriage. But I do worry about this, that I'm showing kind of I don't want to say idealized, but I'm showing the part of open relationships that work. And I think I'm very conscious to try and talk about the struggles with jealousy and the struggles with kind of figuring out agreements and communication and setting boundaries and the exposure to risk. Like at the end of the day, if you're in an open relationship, there is a risk that my partner could fall in love with someone else.
Yep.
Right.
That risk doesn't actually go away with monogamy, right? Like,
so true.
Many people that can tell you that it is very possible for you to be in a monogamous relationship, your partner to leave you for somebody else. Yeah. But in an open relationship, it could happen a little bit more easily because it's allowed. And there are these things that I think it's important to talk about. And then going to your point, Alex, that's really where I get judgment. The moment you talk about any of the hard stuff,
right?
It's like,
well, I told you so. What did you think was going to happen?
Exactly.
Yeah. You can't even be that vulnerable or that really truthful in a public forum.
It's not like our conversation here where we're spending, 30 minutes talking about this. My videos are a minute and a half. And so you're trying to sell complex ideas about relationships, arguably the most important thing that we'll ever do in our lives, in like 1 minute.
Yeah.
You're talking about jealousy in 1 minute. I'm sorry.
No big deal.
And so how do you manage the love factor? Like, how do you manage that? The falling in love with someone else and then turning it off.
Yeah,
because
like
it's
going
getting
back to the
too
rules.
intense?
Is that
like,
something?
Like, how does that play out?
Do you have a rule? Like, well, we can't, I will only date, people for 1 date or 3 dates.
Or 6 months, and then, sorry, it's time to go.
Time's up. I don't want to fall in love with you.
I mean, it kind of goes back to my example of like, if you're monogamous and not, you could still fall in love with someone else.
Definitely,
I don't
yes.
feel like we can control our emotions.
Yeah.
And I love getting to live a life where I don't have to control my emotions. However, Amanda, I was totally scared to fall in love with someone for the first time. Like, I didn't fall in love with someone else until about, I hope I get like 6 or 7 years into our open relationship. I fell in love with someone else that I was dating, and I dated for over a year.
Wow.
And at first, I was so scared. I was like, am I going to ruin my marriage? I just had my daughter, we've got 2 kids, and I'm falling for someone. And it was really beautiful because I didn't stop loving my husband. And interestingly, it did happen about the same time my daughter was about 6 months old. And I had a similar fear when I was pregnant with my daughter. I was so scared that I was going to love my son less because now I was going to have a daughter. And that's not how it works. And not to be like, oh, woo-woo, but your heart grows and you're like, oh,
your love multiplies, doesn't divide.
Yeah, the love multiplies.
It does,
like,
yeah.
It's infinite. And I think the fact that that happened at the same time that I was dating someone else, my heart grew and I loved him as well. And what was interesting for me that now makes it less scary is it was a very different kind of love. It's not the same love I have for my husband. The love I have for my husband is different than the love I have for my kids, than love I have for my parents, for my best friend. And so when my heart grew and all of a sudden I loved my boyfriend too, I was like, oh, wow, I have a lot of love in my life. This is really cool. And that love is not taking away from any other love. Now, resources are limited.
Yes.
And time is limited. My energy
date nights
is limited.
and like,
And so that takes management. But the love was just like, wow, this is cool.
That's so special. I'm still struggling, I'm not going to lie, with the whole idea of it, because I could see the need to like have a weekend getaway or go on vacation with somebody else. You're in a different spot. Things are different. You're not in your regular routine. But I think for like when you said, my love for my boyfriend didn't affect my love for my husband, I'm like, okay, this is interesting for me. There's things coming up. Time is limited.
What was coming up for you?
Well, it's just this whole idea of like, so for my husband and I, we stopped at 2 kids because I'm like, there's only 2 of us. I don't want to have to keep dividing up my time and miss out on things in their life. And so to me, it's like, and I wanted to segue into kids anyways, like you're now taking time away from your children also to go have this new relationship. How do you sort of reconcile that?
Oh, I think that's absolutely fair. And it is interesting. This is probably one of the main comments I get. It's like, oh, anytime you're not spending with your children, all the time you're spending with someone else, you're not spending it with your kids. And
to be clear, I think having kids and breaks from kids and life outside of kids is all 100% natural. I think that's incredibly important.
And needed. You need to have that.
Absolutely.
It makes you a better parent. Not everybody has that opportunity.
Yes.
Even people who are in monogamous relationships, they are on and they never get that break. They never do. And
but I would feel guilty. I think I would feel guilty from taking more time away from spending with them. But anyways, please answer the question. I can talk about this forever.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great question. Honestly, I struggle with this. I'm not gonna pretend like I know this one. I've got this one figured out. My kids are 11 and 7, and right now I feel so lucky that I get to spend as much time with them as I do. Part of it is both my husband and I work from home. We get to go to pickups and drop-offs every day. Right. But yeah, I do. I go away on trips by myself, and then the kids are home for 3 or 4 days, like with my husband. And I think there's a couple of things. One is that like I feel like getting experiences and being able to be an individual makes me a better parent. It makes me a better human that is still interesting and engaged and kind of like functions as an individual. And I think it's a matter of like, then how much time? How much time? And is there a thing as too much? There is. I went away. I mean, I recently, I don't need to get into too many details on this, but I had to go back to the US for my spousal visa. So I had to leave the UK and go back to the US for a total of 6 weeks. And
Oh,
I
wow.
was separated from the kids for 3 weeks because I was like, what's the shortest amount of time we can do this? So I was separated for the kids for 3 weeks. And then my husband flew over with the kids and I was with the kids for 2 weeks and luckily my visa was approved a little bit early and we all flew back. But I was 3 weeks away from my kids. And that was way too long. Like
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, the first 10 days I was like, this is amazing. Oh my God. No one is waking up like, I get to decide when I wake up. I get to decide how late I was like, this is amazing. Day 10, I was like, this is too much.
Yeah.
This is too
Yeah.
long. I'm missing a part of me.
Yeah.
I'm missing the mom part. The mom part of me that like loves the snuggles and reading and helping these children like turn into incredible humans is missing.
Yeah.
And so I think so much of it is like being really in tune to myself. Like, what is that balance where I still get to be an individual, a wife and partner, and a mom? Because those are my core 3 things at the moment. And like making sure that those are always like in balance as much as they fucking can be. Given
Is
preach.
anyone balancing everything? Does
Yeah.
anybody have it figured
Like,
out?
Yeah.
like
Like-
I love, there's
I
a
mean-
range. But then also balancing the needs of my kids and balancing the needs of my husband. If my children are going through something, I'm dating less. I'm spending a lot more time with them. If whether that's studying for something at school or whether we just moved here and they're trying to make friends or whether just because they go through phases where they need you more and they've got more questions and they want to snuggle longer and like making sure that I'm there for that. There's no formula. I can't tell you a formula. For me, it ends up being about 1 day off a week, give or take.
Okay.
That's how much time I spend, whether that's painting class or dating
Right.
or whatever. My husband and I have a date night a week where we get a babysitter, and we've done that since our son was born 11 years ago, which I think is hugely important.
I think that's so important.
Yes. To not talk about
Prioritize.
logistics, but to actually
Have a
just
little bit of that
revel
later
in each
fun.
other's company. Yeah, that's beautiful.
And so
We
speaking
still
of,
probably spend the first hour talking about logistics, but yeah,
it's like, let's get the housekeeping out of the way from this meeting, and now we can actually enjoy each other's company. But speaking of your children, so how does it work? Like, as you said, you have an 11 and 7-year-old. Okay, so maybe they're quite young still, but as they get older and they maybe have questions, how much of it do you plan on sharing with them, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, and you're online, so
Right,
they
so
could
it's out
really
there.
just see
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Ooh. I can't tell you how often I'm like, why didn't I do a DIY gardening channel? Really?
I think the same
Really?
thing. I mean, some of our content, I'm like, kids, you're never watching that.
Nope.
Like, no, that's just not for you.
I know. Whose idea was that? It was my husband's idea.
So
Interestingly, to start the
funny.
TikTok.
Oh, funny.
You know what? Sorry, really quick on the social media thing. I had no idea when I started. I made my first 4 videos on a total whim because I was talking to a friend who was wanted to open up a relationship, and I was like, I'm going to write you a blog post. So I wrote my blog post, and I showed my husband, super proud of my blog, and he's like, honey, it is 2022. What are you doing? Go put it on TikTok. I was like, yeah. Posted 4 videos on TikTok. The first 3 went viral, and within 48 hours, I had 60,000 followers or something
Holy
like that.
shit.
Oh my
Good for
goodness,
you.
wow.
Just shows the appetite is there
It's
for
there.
more of
People-
this information. Yeah.
And sorry, I don't think that's quite right. I think it was like 60,000 within like a week or 2. But like,
Listen, we're not going to fact check you, Danielle. It's all good. You pump your tires, girl. You get it.
but I think it sort of just the trajectory was so quick, so fast that I don't think I was mentally prepared for like, what am I doing? Like, what are the long-term consequences? Since then, we have set a lot of boundaries in terms of like what my content is, what is talked about, what we tell the kids, what we don't in terms of like my social media. I've been working on a book for a long time. It's actually being shopped to publishers at the moment as we speak. Which is
Wonderful.
exciting.
Congrats. Very exciting.
Well, don't congrat yet.
You wrote a book. I am going to congratulate you for that because you sat down and wrote
the book's not
words.
done yet. It's shopped on proposal.
Okay.
But I think that there was a need there that I felt like I could solve. Like there was a need. There were so many people and for every hateful comment I get, for every 10 hate comments I get online, I get a direct message for someone being like, I have this question. My partner brought it up. I'm experiencing this. I've been in a marriage for 20 years to a man and I feel like I'm bisexual. Like this is happening to our libidos. I fell in love with someone I don't know what, like I can't, and everyone ends it with, and I don't have anyone I can talk to about this. And that is the biggest fuel for what I do that I've ever experienced it. And I will have to figure out how to balance that with what we tell our children.
Mhm.
So to date, to answer your question, we have told my son and not my daughter. So my son is 11. He has actually met my husband's ex-girlfriend and past girlfriend, and remembers going on a vacation with her, like remembers her,
Oh,
remembers how much
wow.
he liked her, and was able to say like, "Oh, okay, I kind of get it."
Mm.
Um, and I think for him, he's of that age where he's like, "Okay, I can understand this." Um, Interestingly, he totally turned to my mom at one point in time and was like, "Can 3 people get married?" And she was like, "What?" Uh, and I think my daughter's just not emotionally mature enough yet.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
She's
for
quite young.
her, we're like, "Oh, mom and dad are out with friends. Like we're
Right.
hanging out with friends tonight. We're doing whatever." I hope, and the way that I justify it to myself, for better or for worse, because again, I'm figuring this out as a mom as well, is that I hope that my parents and my children, I think, sorry, I was going to talk about parents in a second, but my children especially will see me living the most authentic version of my life,
Mm.
which is I am a bisexual and I still get to date and I am writing a book and I'm creating content and I am in a wonderful, happy marriage and I love being a mom. And I hope that by them seeing that I am doing all these different things and that is the whole package, that is going to give them more than permission, but is going to encourage them to live their most authentic version of their lives. Because they saw me do it. They didn't see
Yeah.
me trying to like shove myself into a role.
Love
And
that.
I think that's what I want for them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
God, I hope that no one else is telling them about my marriage. And it's very possible that's going to happen. And I am going to have to figure that out when I get there.
Listen, we've all got something that our kids are going to find out about and realize that we're not, whatever that they had imagined us to be. And
Especially if
that's
you're a public
and
figure,
if you're a public
right?
and if you're sharing
Yeah,
stuff
for
online.
sure.
How do you manage the jealousy of your children experiencing things then without you and with a different partner? Because
I
I
was there
think Oh,
all
you
3
were
of us.
also there. Oh my God, that's adorable. Okay, I love that for
okay.
you. I was just
Yeah.
going to say a lot of our listeners are going through divorce and there now is a step parent involved or there's blended families and they themselves are a step parent. And so there's a lot of emotions wrapped up in
Someone else being a parent to your
someone
kids.
else being this really important role in their lives when you're not there. And I feel like that you kind of hit on that, but I love that you're vacationing all together. That's adorable.
I actually haven't experienced this. So
Amazing.
my husband and I, our children have never been with like one of us and one of our partners
Okay.
without the other person.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we had a vacation where it was me, my husband, and we surprised him with his girlfriend came and joined us. And it was adorably wholesome. Like people are gonna have like all these like crazy ideas. It was pool time, people. Like it was very cute. But
Probably was helpful too.
Yeah.
Right?
3 adults, 2 kids.
adult alone.
Let me tell you, there's several times I see these polycules and they're like, and I was like 5 adults and 3 children. I was like, yeah, I get,
Smart. Yeah.
I like those numbers. I don't know how this math works, but so we just moved to be closer to my husband's sister and her family. And all of a sudden we're 4 adults and 4 kids. And we're like, that is way easier than 2 adults and 2 kids. Like, how does that math work? But it does.
It does.
Parent math
It
is
totally does.
strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so okay, I'm curious. Okay.
Mm.
If I were to tell you that, my husband's girlfriend, we're going to take the kids away, or like I was going to go with a boyfriend or girlfriend and take the kids somewhere. I have no idea how I would react. What do you guys hear? What do you hear from people who are going through the experience of their ex-partner's new partner raising their kids?
Yeah, it's tricky.
I think it's hard, especially in the beginning. I think time makes it easier, and especially if this person is a permanent fixture, right? I think we always talk about permanency, like in our separation agreements that we do. We try and discourage people from introducing their children to people who are just, a new partner, right? They have to sort of be someone who's going to be around for a while. And so I think that it's even still, I think for the other parent, it's hard for them to at first sort of accept it. But
and depending how they met, if this is the affair partner that they're now continuing a relationship with, that there is that jealousy. There is the like, this is the relationship that broke up my life. Yeah. And now you guys are vacationing together and I'm sitting at home crying. Like that can be tricky.
Right.
Oh, I would be pissed too. I get
right. You get it. You can empathize for sure. But I think that's what excites me about this conversation is that it's like that isn't the only way. There are different options. Your family can be whatever your family can be, and you don't have to limit to these, boxes that we've
black and white. I
decided.
think our society is so like, you get married, you stay married, and that's it. And there's no stepping out. There's no opening up. There's no alternative arrangements. But people are doing things differently. And like, who's to say that their way is wrong if it works for them?
And what I hear from you a lot is it's just the willingness to actually be self-aware of what you want and then to communicate that to your partner.
Yeah.
And shouldn't that be the basis of every fucking relationship?
I think that's what it all comes down to, is that if you're hiding it from your partner, there's a problem, right?
Or from yourself.
But as long as you're all consenting adults, who the fuck cares what you do?
I know. And if that actually makes for a healthier, happier human that can then, to your point, be a better parent and partner and employee and contributor to this planet for the short little life that we have on it, why the heck not?
Absolutely. Well, and I also think adding to that, so like kind of being able to articulate what you want and communicate that not only to yourself, to your partner, and like kind of figuring out what works for you, but then also being open to the changes over the course of a long-term partnership. Because I think, Alex, you were saying that, you guys were seeing, I'm sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're seeing divorces happen when the kids are 8 through 12. Is that right?
That's what I find the most typical. Yeah.
There are phases in a long-term relationship that are just harder than others, where you kind of need to be like, you know what, we're going to stop doing what everyone else tells us we're supposed to do and figure out what works for us. And I do think that as society, historically speaking, we have this sort of very set plan, this relationship escalator of this is how it's supposed to work. This is how it's supposed to look. And not just from like a religious and cultural perspective, but from like a legal perspective too.
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
There's a lot of legal things that also inform this like monogamous single partner all time relationship to just be aware of. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying to be aware of them. And like one of the things I really encourage people to think about is like phases. It is okay to have a phase in your relationship that's like, where you change things up a bit. Where you're giving someone who even if you're staying monogamous, like most people are monogamous because that is what works for most people, but I think that in our open relationship, when I was saying we gift each other that night off a week. Imagine if you were to say to a monogamous relationship, gift your partner a night off.
Yeah.
Gift them a night off for these years when the kids are when things are tough.
Yeah.
How can you support your partner to go and make sure they get to be themselves, they get to be not be mom for a moment and go pursue a new passion, a new activity. Maybe it's not water, maybe it's watercolor, maybe it's pole dancing. Who knows?
Sure. Who cares?
Who cares?
Almost like I always think of like people should create parenting plans while they're married and while they're in those crazy years of raising little kids. Because imagine if you knew that every other it doesn't have to be the full weekend, but let's say it's every other Friday night or Saturday night. That's your night off. You're not on duty. That's your time to do whatever the heck you want.
Yeah.
Like having that
and schedule a date night for your parenting plans.
In the parent.
I think the number one best decision my husband have ever made is that since our son was born, we've had a regular date night. The babysitter is booked months in advance every week.
Repeat. Yeah. I love it. I love it.
Okay, we have this night.
Because you're prioritizing your relationship, but you're also prioritizing yourselves as individuals. And what you choose to do with your individual night off is really up to you. Provided that obviously it's, discussed within the family and everyone's on board with it. No, I've always shared this. My brother and sister-in-law, they, from the time she got pregnant, were like, okay, you take Fridays, I'll take Saturdays. So it's like, you're putting that kid to sleep Friday night, you're waking up with that kid Saturday morning. The other person doesn't do anything. So they're either going out or they're, doing whatever, or they're there, but they're off duty. So there's not that guilt of like, oh, I should be helping, but I'd really rather sit on the couch. And it's worked so nicely for them. And I thought, oh, you've actually done what eventually we all put into a parenting plan when the marriage fails, because you need to prioritize yourself first and foremost so that you can give back to the family and be all you can be.
I love this example so much. One of the things that I've also talked about is that I think that our relationship, it's it does feel like it's 50 overall, but the
Mm.
key to our freedom is that either of us can be 100%.
Mhm.
I was talking about, like, going away for a couple days. The only reason I can do that
Yeah.
is because my husband can fully
Yeah.
take
Mm.
over the kids. I don't need to, like, prep meals in advance. I don't
Right.
need to, like, write little stickers on the bottles of, like, what to do when. I've
Yeah.
never needed to do that. I can walk away and
Yeah.
know that he's got it.
Yeah.
Right.
And so much of that is just like, he might do things differently than me, but like he's got it. I have a very capable, intelligent, incredible partner. He's got it.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the other yeah, so I think that in and of itself, like being able to be 100%, being able to like fully turn off
Yeah, to
is so important.
recharge. Yeah.
But that's also your ability to give up some control. And
Yeah.
I think for moms especially, that's a hard one to do because not all of, other parents are able to be 100%.
Oh, the best parenting advice I ever got when we were pregnant with our first was don't be the expert. The second
I love that.
right? The second
Yeah.
you decide you're the expert, your partner is not.
Yeah.
You're doing it all. You're teaching them. You're telling them how to do it. You're training them to do it the way you want.
And it's no longer a partnership.
It's not a
And then
partnership.
you're mothering
Then you're
them.
mothering. Now you're
Yeah.
mothering everyone and you're resentful, you're burnt out, your mental load is over the top. And guess what? You divorce. One quick question, if you still have a few minutes. You mentioned family law in terms of monogamy. I'm curious about, like, would you ever encourage folks that are opening up a relationship, like later on, maybe from the beginning, I guess it doesn't really matter, to do some kind of like prenup, like to have a marriage contract where it's like, oh, if you fall in love with somebody else, they don't get half of your estate because, I need that. I'm the mom of your kids. Like, would you think about taking it to that extreme in terms of like the rules and the boundaries that you establish?
Oh, interesting. Huh. I've never thought about it before. I think that okay, all right, here's my initial instinct,
Yeah.
and I'm curious your thoughts. We have rules and agreements in our open relationship, and they constantly have to evolve.
Mm.
And one of the things that I talked to my mom about at one point in time was like, should we make? We were struggling, and I had this my husband and I were like umming and ahhing. It's like, well, should we write a postnup? So like, what would it look like if we
Yeah.
got divorced? And my mom gave a really interesting piece of advice. She was like, no, because then you've made an exit plan.
Ah.
You've made an exit plan versus making a how do we make this work forever plan.
How do we find our way back instead?
How do we find our way
Yeah.
back? And I think one of the things that's pretty cool about our rituals, our agreements that we have in our open relationship is that feels like our forever plan.
Mm.
It's like, how do we talk about the hard things? How do we communicate difficult stuff? How do we make that time to reconnect? It's not just making time to reconnect, but how do we make time to stay connected at all times? And then what is our ritual of reconnection if we ever disconnect?
I like that.
How are we supporting each other to live our biggest, fullest lives? Like those are the things that we talk about in kind of our agreements on a regular basis.
Yeah. It's the
And
only.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the forever plan. And I wonder sometimes if having an exit strategy it's kind of like what we were talking about with social media. It's you're like, oh, that looks really good.
Yeah.
And
That
then
other
you're really
grass
feeling.
is looking really green
Yeah.
in that paperwork.
And
Yeah,
so
no, I
maybe
definitely- I hear that. I hear
people
that.
should have a plan for how do we keep things together. Like that's.
I mean, I guess I would argue only that, like, isn't the plan when you say your vows, like until death do us part, kind of the plan.
But then there's no room for change, I guess, is what Danielle is saying, is that these things
Yeah.
have to change, and it's like a
Evolves,
living
yeah.
document almost. It's a living agreement of
Yeah.
as your life changes, your needs are going to change and changing with it, rather than, well, this is what you agreed to when we got married and it shall remain
Yeah.
forever.
The only
But
reason
there is an argument to say of negotiating hard things when the relationship's in a stable place. And
Exactly.
this is, Alex, kind of going back to what I was saying is like, if anyone's going to open up their relationship, do it when you're in a healthy, stable place.
Yes.
Because you are opening yourself up to vulnerabilities. And I wonder, I can see both sides,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is if you're like, okay, if trying to negotiate when we are at a point where we are angry and upset with each other
Yeah.
is really difficult. Like it is better in some ways to kind of figure out those agreements early on
Yeah.
when we were healthy and happy.
Yeah.
I
love a prenup for everyone. So that's why I ask and to be clear, I don't love one that you're doing at the 11th hour when like one of you is about to walk down the aisle, but to sit down because I think a lot of times like with losing a lot of community and that church kind of vibe of, premarital classes and parenting strategies. We go into these relationships, again, going back to the beginning of our conversation, it's not intentional. Do you want kids? Yeah, okay, cool.
I'm
okay, that's
prepared.
the conversation about our parenting. Yeah. No. Anyone can be a mom, anyone can be a dad. You bone once and boom, there you go. But what is your parenting strategy? How do you want to parent? How do you want to raise your children? What are your values? What are your morals? Like, we love to do a family mission statement and we do it with the kids. We bring them involved. What is our family? Yeah. Like, what do we represent? What do we want to put out in the world? We want to be kind. We want to be whatever that is. Again, age dependent, of course. But like, this is intentionality. This is how we're choosing to go into the world and to coexist in community. And so for me, I think when you're happiest, i.e. at the beginning of the relationship, you're choosing to marry someone, you're choosing to spend your life with this one person, to say, okay, and what does that look like? And if things go badly, here is, yes, an exit strategy. But I mean, hopefully you don't ever have to need it, but it forces couples to pause and think about, what do I want? And that's an opportunity, I think, if you're opening up that can of worms, to go, have we considered an open relationship? Have we considered a throuple? Have we considered whatever? Maybe we're asexual at some point. We're going to go through phases, like, just to have these conversations that no one is having ever.
And so I want to ask,
it makes me so angry.
I was going to say, so Alex, you want to know the conversation that I don't feel like couples have enough, whether they're monogamous or not, is what counts as cheating?
Another great question.
Have you met? They're like,
that's
texting
not
counts as cheating. Watching porn counts as cheating. Like, talking to an ex on Facebook Messenger counts as cheating. Following her Instagram account counts as cheating.
That's a really good one. Establish that.
So I think that there are a lot of these things that do need to be discussed.
Yeah.
And shouldn't be taken for granted.
Yeah.
That would be one that I would encourage you to throw into that
what counts as cheating?
Yeah.
People think if it's not a physical interaction, then it's not cheating.
And I will talk to a ton of people that's like, if it's emotional, that's cheating.
Yes, emotional can be way more impactful than even just physical.
Yeah, okay. Well, I can make the argument, well, we're not, biologically we are non-monogamous. So then, but are we emotionally non-monogamous, right? Like, if I can say to you, well, biologically you need to go spread your seed, and that to me is fine because that's being ruled by, biology and evolution, and we have this, completely societal construct of what we have decided relationships should look like today. But from an evolutionary standpoint, that's not where we are. So off you go, have as much sex as you want outside of the marriage, but heaven forbid you fall in love with somebody outside the marriage, right? Like, there is, for each individual person,
their own line in the sand.
There is your own line in the sand.
All have their own line in the sand.
Exactly. And nobody, you're right, Danielle, nobody's having that conversation because nobody wants to think about it. But I think it's like, if I say it, then there's a chance it's going to happen. Okay, but there's a chance it's going to happen anyways. So let's at least talk about it and have a plan.
And talking about it, what would you say to people who are maybe in a relationship and they are considering opening it up, but they don't know how to broach the subject with their partner?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to first do a shameless plug for my content on
Please do.
Currently on Substack. So I have a couple's guide to opening up. It's about 6 videos that talks through how to have the initial conversation, how to think about opening up in phases, how to think about timing, how to set initial boundaries and rules, a process for doing so, how to manage jealousy, and then a couple of other kind of like food for thought. The piece that I give, the thing that I say over and over to anyone considering an open relationship, because I will often have someone ask me saying, I want to bring this up to my partner, I don't know how. And so the thing I always say is, know your why. Why do you want to consider an open relationship in the first place? Is it because your libidos aren't aligned? Is it because you think you might be bisexual? Is it because you met someone else? Is it because you just want to have a few extra experiences because you met your partner when you were 18 and both virgins? Like, what is your why for opening up a relationship? And go to your partner with that problem, because that's the thing that you want to solve. And then your partner becomes part of the solution. Because when you go to your partner and say, I want to be in an open relationship, you're going to them with the solution. Versus making them part of figuring out what's going to work with you. Because an open relationship is one solution. It is not the only one. Yeah. There are so many other ways to solve for all of these different challenges that that I'm seeing, that I'm hearing people talk about. And so that's my number one thing. Know your why. Go to your partner with the problem and let them be part of the solution, because then it kind of becomes an adventure together. Again,
Right.
it might not be an open adventure. It might be, oh, we're monogamous, but we're gonna go flirt at a bar and reignite this excitement, or like we're gonna go skydiving because we need an adrenaline rush. Like there
Right. There are
all
other options.
things.
I
Yeah.
love that. Okay,
yeah.
so Substack, is that open commitment on Substack?
You can find me as openly committed across all my channels.
Okay,
And my
perfect.
website is Open Commitment. You can go there pretty easily. And then I'm on TikTok and Instagram as Openly Committed, where I share a lot of kind of reels and videos with my 1 to 1.5 minute kind of thoughts, stories, recommendations. And I'm pretty active on Instagram stories with a little bit of behind the scenes and some more not as edited off the cuff thoughts, as well as weekly Q&As.
Amazing. Well,
I
thank
love
you
it.
so much, Danielle. This has been very eye-opening.
This has been a really, really wonderful conversation.
And I hope it leads to more conversations for our listeners and getting people to have those tough challenges and maybe look inward and realize that maybe what they're doing isn't working and there are other alternatives. So thank you.
There are so many alternatives out there. And I mean, that is kind of the cool. I love getting to talk to you about this. I feel like I'm learning about divorce. I have this fear of divorce, I think.
Sure.
In some ways, I think most people probably do. And I know that there's so many kind of misunderstandings or preconceived notions around open relationships. So it's so cool to get to have a conversation with you ladies that is not 1.5 minutes long.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you
Take
again.
care.
Really
We appreciate
appreciate
it.
it. Take care.
So good.
This episode was written and created by Alex Howard and Amanda Silver, produced, edited, and engineered by RTF Productions. Make sure to rate and review our show if you loved it, to give us a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you stream your podcast to stay up to date on all upcoming episodes. Thanks for listening, and go easy on us. We're not your ex.